Hello everybody, welcome to Method Airwaves. This is Doug Brown here, episode 7, Mom Tribute. Why a mom tribute? Well, because my mother, an extremely important person in my life, passed away when I was 16 years old, April 9th, 1990. So, I've dealt with that for many years now. It's hard to believe all these years have gone by. And it's a tribute to her. I think her memory deserves to live on. And for me, this is a platform that I can express myself and share my story with others and hopefully reach other people and inspire other people. Because all of us have dealt with loss in one way, shape, or another. And all of us have a parental figure, mother, father, whatever it may be. So this could reach you as well, because mothers or providers are an extremely important person in our lives. They're monumental. I mean, I owe her so much. And my father, who is still alive, without a doubt, I owe him more than words can express. So in life, people, the ones we're closest to, you never know. One day, everything could seem normal, and the next day, they could be gone. Or, in the case of my mother, she had the cancer, and I was young. I was a teenager. I was engulfed into my own little selfish world like all teenagers are, and not realize what is happening. At the time, it seemed so surreal that my mom was going through this that part of me just was an autopilot and might have blocked a lot of it out. And boy, do I have regrets of that time period and how I would have handled things completely different. So, in the moment here, for the ones that we love, your parents, tell them that you love them instead of showing negative energy or investing time in anything like that. It's human. We all do that. We tend to hurt the ones that we're closest to. It's a human defect that we all have. It's something we got to fight and work on to appreciate those that are around us, especially our parents. With that, my mother, Rebecca Ann Brown. She lived an amazing life. Her life was cut short. She had passed away when she was 47 years old. I am now 46 years old. I was 16 when she passed away. I can't imagine having her illness that she had and having 2 teenage boys to deal with and a busy life. The weight that she must have felt, the things that were on her plate. I just can't imagine right now if somebody told me that news that she had received. So in this moment, I'm thinking about my own life. And if I was handed an hourglass like she was, knowing that life could end, it's a really heavy thing to think about. So from now until 47, I will be grasping onto every second and enjoying every moment in her honor. It's something I think about quite often. I've always been somewhat like that, not taking little things for granted, living in the moment, living life to the fullest. But when she passed away, that all went into hypersensitivity mode. And especially now, because I think about the fact that she did pass away at 47. She didn't get to see me graduate high school. She didn't get to see me buy my first home. She didn't see my dreams come into fruition. And she didn't have the opportunity to meet pivotal people that have come into my life since her. And that hurts. But again, cherishing the time that I did have with her. And I wish it was more. Life is so delicate. You see in the obituary where somebody passes away, any death is sad, no matter what age it is. But if I see in an obituary or I go to a funeral and the individual is maybe, let's say, 87 years old. My grandparents died in their early 90s. And I think, wow, those people got to live twice as long as my mom. Or when I see my mom's friends that are still alive, when I'm out and about, I'll be at the library or the post office and I'll run into them. And I see them and I look in their eyes and I see how they've aged, and a certain sadness comes over me. And I just think, wow, she could still be here. A lot of her friends, I mean, they're so awesome. Some of these people in the community that I run into, they always make sure to tell me a story. It's a little overwhelming. I mean, it's awesome that she had left an impact on so many people. But they'll tell me this story about her and what a glow she had about her. And she had a heart light that was unmatchable. And people would tell me, wow, you really look like her. I get that a lot. Oh, you have her smile. And to me, that's such a huge wink, because I am lucky to be a product of my mom. Mothers are so important. And wow, what a concept. The idea that we each came from another human being. I mean, there's no words to describe the magic of human life. And this woman gave me that. Of course, my father played his part as well. But my mom, the relationship between a mother and their child is just, there's no words, folks. And so I hold on to a lot of these thoughts. And today I'm going to talk about her life, maybe for selfish reasons, for me, to dive into some of her history. And my mom, if she was alive, she would have been a grandparent. She would have had grandchildren. So it's always been my goal, and I carry the torch of carrying on her memory in my family. I feel like I'm the one, more than anybody, that talks about her. A few years back for Christmas, I made ornaments to give everybody. They were gold, and they had a picture of her in the middle. Just something so small, but yet it's still a huge wink to her life, and that she should live on. And my father, to his credit, privately, when we're doing dinner or just hanging out, maybe in the car or something, going for a drive, he'll mention a story that will pull at my heartstrings. or if there's an anniversary of something, like their wedding anniversary or some big event in their life that happened, he'll send me a text message. And to me, that's gold. That's special. So, going into my mother's life, I do have some things of hers. I'm very fortunate to have these items. I have some journal type things in front of me. I have her objects. I have some letters that she had wrote me when I was in high school, and they sent me away. We'll get to that in a little bit. And I also have a medallion that I'll talk about after a bit that my father got her years ago. And I have an 8x10 black and white photo of her that I had received. Not really sure how I ended up with this, but it was the photo that was on top of her casket when she passed away. She had a closed casket, and that photo is here with me, along with some other items. But starting in a time machine going way back, my mom, last name was McPeak. Some McPeaks out there. And her parents were Jack and Martha. My mom had a younger sister, a couple years younger than her. And she had a younger brother that passed away when he was just a few months old, which was sad. His name was Ricky. So Ricky would have been my uncle. And my grandparents were just awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm so lucky that I had them through a large portion of my life. And something my grandma always said, and she was a real special, emotional, just light. And she would always just out of nowhere say the heaviest things. She had said one time that how unfair it was that she had lost 2 kids, and that it wasn't fair, and that she, in a heartbeat, would trade her life for those children to switch places. Oh, a mother's love. Now, my mom, when she was young, early 1940s, 1950s, we're talking Elvis Presley, the Beatles came into play later on. And my grandma told me that my mom had movie posters on her walls. She was really into entertainment. She played the piano quite well, very classically trained, and she would sing, and she also played some guitar. So these are heavy traits that definitely bled into me, without a doubt. And she was social and bubbly and funny, and she carried that through her life. I will never forget, through my young life and my teen years, my early teen years, how funny she always was and sarcastic, and she had no filter at all in any topic. Anything went. Sometimes that was good, sometimes that was bad. My mom and I fought all the time when I was in high school because we were so darn alike. We would bump heads, and she was very stubborn. She had a bumper sticker one time somebody gave her that said, "I'm easy to please as long as I get my way." And that's my mom in a comical way, without a doubt. And she ended up going to nursing school. Oh, I should mention too, my parents, they met in the town of Mount Gilead, Ohio, which is where my parents are from. And this goes way back. My mom, in her journal, in her grade school years, mentions that she has a crush on a little Chucky Brown. Charlie Brown, that's my dad's name. Like the cartoon, and he looks like him, and yes, I've got that my whole life. Is your dad Charlie Brown? Do you have a dog named Snoopy? No. So, that out of the way. Yes, my mom had a crush on my dad in grade school. So they knew each other all in their young life and started dating in high school. My parents are high school sweethearts. I mean, this is Back to the Future stuff. If you've seen the movie, the very beginning, that whole Americana bit with the poodle dresses and all that. That was my parents in the small town of Mount Gilead, Ohio, which if you've seen Back to the Future, that town looks exactly like that town. Even to this day, the little square, you know, the circle, you got the church, you got the little movie theater, you got the ice cream shop. So that's what that's where they spent all their time, walking up and down those streets, and they went to the Capitol Theater together, holding hands, and they were boyfriend, girlfriend. And after they graduated, my dad went to college, and my mom went to nursing school. So it was quite an interesting time for them, and I'm sure they did a lot of self-discovery. I have letters that my dad wrote my mom during that time period. But they still had a link, and they still stayed together. And in front of me, I have a report my mom wrote for nursing school. And the title, it's all typed. She was a wonderful writer. She had amazing handwriting. And on the front, it says, Miss Becky McPeak, Introductory Nursing, Section 4, October 23rd, 1961. It is titled in parentheses, My First 18 Years. And in red ink on the far left, it says B+, so the teacher must have graded that. We will give her an A+ today. And I'll read some of this. And between you and me, I haven't read a lot of this. It's been years, so a lot of this will be new. And here we go. This is in her words. Life goes on and on, yet there are many breaks in the regular routine. One unusual break, which changed the routine of the McPeak household, was the birth of their first baby, Becky. I guess my parents were pretty happy about my arrival since they didn't try to throw me out anyway. So my life began October 30th, 1943 at 6:30 p.m. Of course, I don't remember what really happened my first few years, but a big occasion came when I was 4 years old. For my birthday, my parents gave me a little Scotty puppy, which I loved very much. I named my little puppy Scotty, and it seems, as my mother told me, I could never understand that Scotty was a Scotty dog. It's funny how I can remember those days so long ago so well. Scotty and I had many adventures on the farm. Wherever I was, Scotty was, and wherever Scotty was, I was. It wasn't too hard for Mother to keep tabs on Becky, as one might notice. As years went by, we moved to a small town, Mount Gilead, where I began my first year in grade school. I remember my first day of school with my little red skirt and my hair all done up in long curls. I thought I was a pretty big deal, and I got to be the high school band's little mascot that year. I can remember all the hustle and bustle of going to the ball games, Mother and Daddy wrapping me up in a blanket until halftime, and all the little first graders envying me. The little bit of heaven had to end when marching season was over, but I lived in my glory for a long time afterwards. After my first year of school, time really flew, and I found myself being a very old sixth grader. Now in our grade school, a sixth grader was a very old and wise person, of which I was a member. One of the biggest affairs in our sixth grade was the selection of a May Queen in her court to preside over the annual May Day festivities. I remember I had always dreamed of being the queen or an attendant, and my dream came true. Of course, since we thought we were so grown up, we went to wear formals. Our mothers disapproved, but finally we won out after much debating. Thus, May Day went on with Becky McPeak, a sixth grader, being the happiest person alive. This happiness was soon shattered when the death of my baby brother was announced. Ricky was only 5 months old, but he was my parents' pride and joy. Since there were already 2 girls in the family, they had wanted a son, and their wish came true, but he was soon taken away from them. This tragedy, which happened to us, was very hard for me to understand. All I could ask God was, why? It took a while for me to adjust to accept the fact. I don't believe this tragedy helped me to think and understand death in a more mature way. Wow, isn't that fitting? Taking a little pause here. Reading this is kind of difficult because thinking what my mom went through at that young age and moving forward, folks. Then came my happy junior high days, when I began experimenting with lipstick, nylons, and all the extra things which I thought would make a big girl out of me. That year, I had my first real date to a Boy Scout party. I bought a new dress, and Mother let me wear nylons. I was really excited. That is until my date arrived with a big flower, which I detested. In those days, I was very, this is funny. In those days, I was very conforming soul who would never think of being different under any circumstances. At any rate, I went to the party, flower and all, enjoying myself immensely. I finally took the big step and became a typical high school freshman. Since our high school wasn't too exceptionally big, I knew most of the students in the high school, and everyone was really friendly. I indulged in most of the activities and different social functions of the school, which make life, to a teenager anyway, more interesting. One of the big thrills of my high school years was when I was chosen varsity cheerleader, holding this position for 3 years. By being up front of the student body, I learned to know my classmates better and how to work with other people. Maybe my enjoyment of working with and for people led me to thinking of nursing as my future profession. I progressed through my high school years, loving every bit of it, mixing work with fun. During my first few high school summers, I spent most of my time at the swimming pool. As I grew older, I gained more responsibility and took a position as a waitress in a dining room. Having never worked before as a waitress, I underwent some pretty odd and embarrassing situations. The most valuable thing that I did learn, however, was the ability to talk and understand different types of people. I believe this type of work was very good preparation for nursing, and I am very thankful I had this valuable experience. Wow, that's good stuff that she is writing this at 18 years old, that she's already wanting to do something outside of herself and to pay it forward and to think of others and to accept people's differences. That's commendable. All right, continuing here. After my summer of work, I was ready to come back to my senior year, which I had been waiting for so long. Only this year was more serious, as I had to plan my future and carry out those plans to the fullest. I knew by that time that I definitely wanted to be a Mount Carmel nurse, but of course, there were fears and anxieties. I suppose every senior student in high school was plagued with the closeness of their future. But this did not hinder the fun and enjoyment of all the activities. Being seniors, we took over the leadership of the school, which I was very fortunate to become elected to different posts. Of course, by this time, progressing from my junior high days, I began to date a boy steadily. Now, this was a very exciting adventure which made parties and dances even more interesting. Wow. She's talking about my father right now. Whew. Of course, all this fun was wonderful, but my biggest thrill came when I received my letter from Mount Carmel saying I was accepted. No one could really know how relieved I was to know that I had been accepted at the school of my choice. After the acceptance letter, I think most of my worries vanished, and I was already planning this year. Then the big hour came, graduation, the closing of one of the biggest and most fun-filled chapters of my life. It was a frightening experience, yet at the same time a wonderful experience. I knew I was leaving old friends and times, but that I was going into something even greater, which would be helping everyone, nursing. After graduation, I no longer thought of high school, but turned my ambitions and ideals towards Mount Carmel School of Nursing. All the planning and preparation was fun, but still, I had the normal emotions of anyone going away from home for the first time. I was frightened, apprehensive, and many other emotions rolled into one. Finally, the death day came, for I was leaving home to go to school. The way I looked, most people would have thought I was never coming back. When I arrived at Mount Carmel, I was ready for a nervous breakdown. Then I saw all my other classmates looking pretty petrified also. My big sister came and rescued me, and after that, most of my qualms left. Now that I'm all settled and acquainted, I believe I can honestly say I picked the right school, and I like it very much. I wish I could find the words to express my appreciation to my parents for helping me during my travels so far in life. If it hadn't been for my parents, friends, and teachers' encouragements and advice, I would probably not be where I am today. I have many obligations now as a student of Mount Carmel School of Nursing, first to my parents, then to the school. I only hope that I can fulfill the standards of Mount Carmel in becoming an ideal nurse representing Mount Carmel School of Nursing. Whew, that was a few pages long, stapled like they used to do back in the day. And wow, that was interesting because I don't think I've read all of that in ages. And to hear my mom's perspective at 18 years old, wow. And I think of myself at 18 and things that we had in common and normal anxieties in life and all that was ahead for her. And she did become a nurse, and she did so much. In a little bit here, I'm going to list her credits to honor her, and as a reminder of what a person can do with their time and their life, that every day does count. And to take leaps of faith, like she did going to nursing school like that. She could have stayed in her small little hometown and just been content with that like a lot of people do, but she thought outside the box. She wanted to do something proactive and bigger than herself. And after nursing, she became an award-winning real estate agent in the community. Now, my father this whole time was a gynecologist, a successful one in the community, and had an impeccable reputation. People loved my dad. People still love my dad. I've said it in so many of my podcasts about him and my life that people to this day come up to me saying, "Oh, I remember your dad." And being a baby doctor and being involved in that with somebody, you are part of something huge in their life. And that can be difficult and uncomfortable as a woman going to a doctor, a gynecologist, and he had the art of making people feel at ease, and he legitimately cared about them as people. When people came in to their appointments, he would have notes of who was who, and oh, how's Timmy doing? Is he still in soccer? And things of this nature. So to his credit, what a wonderful trait to have. And my mom was very similar. She was of the people. I mean, she would enter a room and Becky Brown, boom. And she wore many, many hats, which I try to do in my life. A lot of them have been involuntarily placed on me. I enjoyed guitar, didn't know I was going to be a guitar teacher. I enjoyed skateboarding in my youth. I didn't know I was going to end up doing that for a living. I grew up on the stage. I didn't know I was going to enter bands, and then one thing led to another. And so embrace your talents, folks, because you never know where they will take you. Now, my mom, I believe I got this information from her obituary. Yes. And a few years back, I had the opportunity to speak to a women's empowerment group. Now, I speak all over the nation. And with my skateboarding, my life, and my books, and this women's empowerment group, they're all women, of course. And then there's me. They hired me to come out and speak to this group. And probably at first they're thinking, oh great, what is he going to tell us? And I've spoke so many times everywhere, but this particular engagement stuck out, and I'll always remember it because it was different. Because I started off right out of the gate talking about my mom, and I was there basically on her behalf as a woman in everything that she struggled with and all her accomplishments and just her as a being and what she's done and how she handled herself, especially through her cancer that she was diagnosed with. And we'll get to that in a second, because that was a really heavy time period in my life. But we're thinking of good, optimistic things. I mean, when we think of someone's life, we don't spend time talking about their death. It's their life. That's the meat and potatoes of their existence. What they did while they were on this planet. That is what matters. And that's kind of what today's podcast is centered on with her, for sure. And here we go. She was a graduate of Mount Carmel School of Nursing and was a realtor for Real Estate Showcase. In 1988 and 1989, she won Ohio's most prestigious and highest attainable award in the real estate field. She volunteered for Welcome Wagon, was president of the Junior Women's Club, a member of Travel and Trellis Garden Club, a board member of Wayne Center of the Performing Arts, and the Women's Symphony Committee. She was a chair of the American Red Cross Nursing Health Program. She was an instructor for the Red Cross Health Programs and served on the board of directors. Awards for her volunteer work include the Distinguished Service Award from the Worcester Jaycees in 1984 and 1989. And that's just a small list of some of her accomplishments. Wow. What she could have been doing today in the world that we live in. She was such a strong woman. And that's important in today's world. I'm a huge advocate of women's rights. A lot of this comes from my upbringing. My dad was very respectful of my mom and taught my brother and I how to treat a lady, how to respect a woman. And not only that, my dad was a gynecologist, a woman doctor. So growing up around that, we were really educated on everything that went with that. Babies being born, delivered. We spoke that language because of him. And I think that's important. I think people sometimes forget that. I think women should be respected and treated well. Their mothers, they're important figures. They have a higher tolerance of pain than men do. There are a lot of things about women that they live longer. You go to any nursing home, which I've spoke to many times, there's 2 guys and 100 women. So, something to think about. They're going to be here for a while. Women, ladies out there, thank you. You have power. And I need to relive some of my stories that I was going to share today about my mother. When I was young, she was the goofy one, the musician, the fun one. Not that my dad wasn't, but he was more square. He was more reserved, and my mom wore her emotions on her sleeve. And I'm a lot like that. So I had a lot of things in common with my dad, but I have a lot of things in common with my mom as well. And with her not here, the traits that I've taken on of her, I recognize more because I can feel her in me. And the light that I try to give people, I feel like I got that from her. Especially in the arena of performing under a spotlight or singing, playing guitar, playing piano. She was a classically trained, wonderful piano player. We grew up with a baby grand piano in our house. Very fortunate for that, because to me it was a toy. I tinkered with it and I didn't know I was going to fall in love with it and figure out chords and end up playing pretty well through the years. And I get that because of her and the fact that we had a piano in the home. She really was my biggest cheerleader. And one time before school, I was a freshman in high school and just woke up. I couldn't find this cassette tape that I had made. At the time, I was writing and recording my own music. I had a 4-track recorder, so I was playing guitar, drums, bass, keyboards, singing, harmonies, the works. And I go upstairs in the kitchen and I see my mother sitting at the table in her robe, and her hands are placed on her ears, she's got headphones on listening to my songs. And she takes the headphones off and she looks at me and she says, "This is just as good, if not better, than anything on the radio today." I mean, it was a really good compliment, and I took it to heart, and I'll never forget that. Even though we had turmoil and that we were kind of fighting during that time period, we did connect on music. She did tell me years ago that if she ever died, if she were to come back, that she would want to return as somebody like Oprah or somebody powerful and meaningful, or maybe a famous musician or a movie star. And so she's always had that light. And one time she was traveling for work and she came back and told me that she saw on a marquee outside a theater, it said Jackson Browne, the musician. And she said that she could see my name, Doug Brown, up there on that marquee, that she could picture it, and that she believed in that. And how cool, looking back, is that? And the fact that I have done some stuff in the spotlight, I think she would be pretty tickled how my journey has ended up. And my mom, she was a stage mom of sorts. My dad did play a part too in getting me into theater and the arts, but my mom, she was the one playing piano and practicing the songs with me and singing. And I have this quick little memory here of her. She had these friends in the community that were needing entertainment for their children's birthday parties. So here I was only 8 or 9, but my mom would book these gigs for me, and one I really remember, I was to do magic for a birthday party. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. It's in the basement, the kids are there. I'm like 9 years old. But I told my mom, don't watch me. I'm kind of embarrassed, I just wanted to do my show. And I'll never forget this because I still think of this to this day. And I'm doing my performance in the basement, but at the top of the stairs, she's sitting there. I could see her feet. And she was spying on her little boy, hopefully proudly. And I think about that today in my skating career and everything that I've accomplished, that she's sitting on top of those stairs looking down on me and hopefully having a sparkle of proudness, because I think about that stuff. I dedicate a lot of stuff to her. I mean, my books, and yeah. I first found out my mom had cancer when I was in 4th grade, so I was just a young guy. And my dad found out on May 20th, 1983. That was a date that he had told me many, many years later. We were randomly just eating somewhere together, just the two of us, and he said, "Today is May 20th. It's the anniversary of when I found out that your mother had cancer." And he was saying this with a lump in his throat, and how horrible that information was for him to receive. And thinking about that is so heavy. Like, wow. So my mom, when my dad first told me, I'll never forget this. I was out in the street. I was playing with my friends, and my dad said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Just you and me." I said, "Yeah, okay, great." And he sits me down and he tells me that my mom has cancer. Now, to me, my first impression at that young age was like, was it from smoking? I was all confused. It was as if he told me she had a cold or something. I was so lightweight about the whole thing, but like, wow, man, that's not good. That stinks. And then he told me that, and then he left, and then I went back to play with my friends. I was so young. I mean, what I was feeling at the time, I was confused. It was like I didn't want to let that information actually in because it was too heavy. It didn't seem real. And later on through the year, my 4th grade year, the way I dealt with it, it would show up in weird ways. Like I would just randomly start crying in school and not know why, or I'd get homesick more than normal, and things like that were happening. And it was a tough time. My parents went into autopilot. My mom was so strong. I mean, she never really let anybody know that she was ill. But there was a change. The people were coming forward, friends, people that were close with us, would bring food to the house, but the cancer ended up going away. So we were like, wow, she battled it. Okay, rock and roll, life's going to go on. And it was like surviving a car crash or something. And life went on. But my sophomore year or so in high school, yes, I was 16, the cancer came back. And the type of cancer, I should say, that she had, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it's a type of cancer that originates in your lymphatic system. The disease-fighting network spread throughout your body. And so we found out she had cancer again. And like, wow, here we are again. What? Really? And I was this teenager. I was all about my girlfriend, all about skateboarding. I had just opened up this skate shop in my hometown, 16 years old, got my vendor's license. That's what I was really focusing on at that time. And my mom and I were fighting fiercely. And man, do I have regrets about that. If I could go in a time machine and instead of saying bad words and fighting with her, I would grab her and hug her and tell her how much I love her, and that I was thankful for everything that she had done for me. She gave me life. I owe her a lot. If I could go in that time machine, I would. And which is another reason to live in her honor and to make good choices in life. You want to honor the people that aren't here, and that's one way to do it. She would not have wanted me to go down a bad, negative, drug-filled path. Instead, she'd wanted me to go down a positive path and do something productive and reach others, much like she was. And so I chose that path without question. And here I am many years later still walking that line, trying to. That's all we can do, is do the best we can do. So back to the teenage time, 16 years old. The day my mom passed away, heavy stuff to talk about. It was the grand opening day of my skateboard shop, April 9th, 1990. Now, up until this time, my mom was in a wheelchair. She couldn't breathe on her own. And she had lost her hair. And she just looked like life was running away from her faster and faster as the days went by. Man, to relive this is heavy. And so I go to my skate shop. The rest of my family is at home with my mom. Everybody's there because we knew that it was coming. It might be tomorrow. Today's the day. My dad would always give us a progress report that we half didn't want to have or hear. So I go to this opening of my shop, made a couple dollars, and I'm biking home, and I see my brother. He's in front of the house shooting hoops like he always did. And he turned around, and he wasn't crying, he wasn't sad, he wasn't screaming, he wasn't mad, but I could tell by the look in his eyes that sure enough, in that moment, my mom had passed away. Wow, a bombshell in my life. What do you do in that moment? You feel stunned. You feel numb. You want to scream. You want to shout. But you're still stunned. You're still numb. And that's what I was going through. My dad, my brother, and I, we went into autopilot. And we didn't sulk to death. My brother and I went to school the next day. People thought we were crazy. But that's how we dealt with it. And that's what my mom would have wanted. Yes, we thought about her, but we were moving forward with her memory in us. We were being productive. We weren't stopping in our tracks. Life goes on. And that's something I remember my dad at my mom's funeral saying. I'd only seen my dad cry a couple times in my life, but That was one day where he was trying to hold it together, rightfully so. I cannot imagine what he was going through. But we were all, the immediate family was all in a circle around her casket. And he just, out of nowhere, just went up to everybody and said, "We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." And we all just froze. And I'll never forget that moment. And that was him putting optimism into our systems, saying, you know what? There's nothing we could have done. This wasn't preventable. This was life. This had happened. What would she have wanted? For us to be moving forward. Not to forget her, but to celebrate her. To remember her. And that's what I've done. She's been part of my journey. It's a reason for even this today, sharing my story with you. Because I know everybody out there right now is going through something. Everybody has struggles, speed bumps, hurdles. Sadly, death is a part of life. Not something we want to fixate on. We don't want to spend our whole life in paranoia about the topic. But it's something we all have to deal with, whether it's a grandparent. It could even be a pet, no matter what it is. Yes, she had so much strength, and something she taught me that I continue to tell people in my speeches is that you can't let something negative define you as a person. For example, she had this cancer. But most people, other than immediate family and friends that were close, did not know this. I mean, she kept going on with her life as long as she could. When she was sick with the cancer, she was going to chemotherapy appointments, and she would get on the phone in the hospital room and negotiate a real estate deal. I mean, people didn't know that she lost her hair. She had a wig. She went to her hairdresser that shaped that wig to look like her hair she had before. And I was with her more than once when somebody came up to her and said, "Wow, we really like your hair. Where do you get it cut?" I mean, that's such a sign of strength that she didn't let something stop her at all. And that she didn't let something like that cancer define her. And we should do that in life. We should not take a negative and let it overwhelm us. We should do the best with what we have and move forward always. And she really did. She had such a lust for life, and she was funny. That's something I really liked about her. And she wasn't afraid to be herself. One story that I always remembered, I listened to Guns N' Roses a lot when I was 14, 15. I mean, they were my messiah. Axl Rose, Slash, Duff McKagan, the whole band. And as much as she looked at them outwardly and said she didn't like their appearance, this and that, and she wasn't a fan of that, all the skulls, and she liked the music a lot, to where she kept stealing my tape. She would drive around doing these real estate negotiations and picking up clients in her used Lincoln Continental. But in between visits, she was rocking out to Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, and she knew all the words. One time, when I came home from school, I heard in the basement music playing. It was Sweet Child of Mine, the song, and she was singing through my amplifier with my microphone, and she didn't know that I had heard her, and she was going to town. Now, normally she would play show tunes on her piano and everything, but this was a treat and something I look back on, and how funny looking back that she was into that. And yeah, she was funny. She used to call me Dubby a lot. Even in junior high, dropping me off at a junior high dance, she'd go, "Come on, Dubby." She would baby talk, and it would drive me nuts, and I'd get mad and angry. But looking back, I get it now that I'm older, that was her saying, "I love you," without being dorky about it. It was code, but it was still, you're still that little boy, even though you're now a teenager. And those teen years were bumpy. I should mention my older brother, 2 years older than me, was dealing with life a little smoother. He had his struggles, but for the most part, he was an ideal son. Grades were good. He was in band. He wasn't causing a lot of friction or waves like apparently I was. Because my parents, they sent me away a few times when I was in high school. At the time, it was just catastrophic in my selfish teenage brain. I thought it was the end of the world that they would send me to a boot camp or a detention center. But looking back, of course, I'm thankful because it gave me an immense amount of reassurance, self-reliance, independence. I gained a lot through those experiences. And the first time they sent me away was a boot camp. It was a boot camp. Yeah, it wasn't easy peasy. It was 3 weeks in Billings, Montana, in the mountains with no electricity, eating raisins 3 times a day, and having iodine put in the water, and hiking 10 miles a day, sometimes more. It was pretty rough. There was a group of 12. I was the skateboarder. Everybody had a different personality. I mean, now they would have made a reality show of something like that, but that was an interesting time in my life, a heavy time. Boy, did I get homesick. But my mom, she typed me out a letter when I got finished with the camp. They gave everybody at the camp letters from their parents. So I was in Billings, Montana, getting ready to get on this bus to take me to the airport. And I have the letter here. It's been years since I've read it, but we'll give it a go. And at the top, it's typed Monday, August 1st, 1988. Dear Dougie Bug. Yes, it says that. Dear Dougie Bug, you're reading this now on a plane or bus as you're getting to come back home. I wonder how you are feeling now. I imagine you are very tired and have some mixed emotions about all of this. Dad and I have spoken and thought about you a lot these past few weeks. You haven't missed anything here. And it goes on about what my brother's up to, my aunt and uncle. And don't worry, I've been keeping your door locked. Turning the page here. I know how you feel about your privacy. The high school schedules are coming out today, I guess. I talked to the school, and after you get home, we can pick up the schedule and walk around to find your classrooms. I can't believe you'll be a freshman. Time flies. It's like starting a new leaf for you after junior high. We hope you can settle into the high school routine here and have a good year. I know by the time you get out of junior high, you've gotten plenty tired of school. These next 4 years are so important for you in so many ways, and we are looking out for your best interest, although I know you have some severe doubts. We've not had one of our better years together. I know that, and I feel very sad that you've called me names. That will not continue. Reading that makes me feel horrible because, yeah. Words are important, and I used a lot of words I shouldn't have used back then. Like I said earlier, watch what you say. You got to hug your parents, not yell at them. Continuing here. Did you take your camera? I bet the scenery was something else. Well, Doug, I'm so proud of you for completing the course. And no, there were tough times for you. But I also know you were capable of anything you set your mind to. I'm sure you were tested many times. You're a special, unique person with so much going for you. And I appreciate that zest for life you have. But I am concerned about that anger you have locked inside. Let us help you. You're very important to me, and I care so much. Love, Mom. Boy, do I read that differently now than I would have back then in 1988. And I do remember going to that high school orientation and everything, and gearing up for my freshman year. That was a tough time, a tough year. And early on in that year, My parents sent me to a detention center. I talk a lot about this in my first podcast 1, solo. It was difficult because I was getting bad grades, and my parents were really nervous because they thought I was going to go down really a bad path. I mean, to my small credit, I was drug-free, alcohol-free, but I was really rebelling in my voice. And yeah, my grades were bad, and they were really concerned about me. So they sent me to a therapist one day. I got to get out of school for a day, so I said, heck yeah, let's do it. And they ended up saying, hey, we're going to keep you here. And they basically locked me up. Making a long story short, that's what happened. I was locked up. I mean, there's no escape. It was a detention center. And I found a letter not that long ago from my mom that she had mailed to me. And this is interesting. It says Thursday, October 27th, 1988, in her handwriting. It says, Dear Buggy, which is funny. She's always putting little quotation marks by these funny names when she addresses me. Just a quick note, since I saw you last night, and we're coming up from family therapy this afternoon, to let you know we're with you all the way, and so pleased you seem to be getting in touch with your feelings. Dad and I, too, are thinking a lot about our family and how much we love you. I want you to feel good about being you, knowing that you, of all of us, including the aunts and uncles, my brother, you have more attributes in your little toe than all of us put together. It's so hard for all of us who love you to watch you go on a direction we think is not beneficial to you. You're not seeing it. At least, I hope you're starting to see some of it. That wonderful individual, strong-willed person in you is you, and we don't want you to ever think our goal is for you to become a different type of person. Your ability to create music is a wonderful gift, but to the exclusion of developing other important areas of your life. These high school years are important years to explore all areas of interest, or at least give them a try. Better get this in the mail. The mail lady comes. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Love, Mom. Oh, to read that. Sorry it took a little bit and it was bumpy. She wrote it on like scrap pieces of paper and it was kind of messy. But it was heartfelt, and as an adult to read that and to think about teenagers and looking back at my teenage years, there's a lot of weight to it. A parent can tell a kid they love them, but how can you put that into their system, in their veins? And now looking back, of course, I see everything they did. It makes sense. I mean, would I have done things differently? If I had this teenager that was me, it's really hard to say. Our parents do the best they can, and we have to give them credit for that. Even if you don't agree with something they've done, you can't change the past. It's the choice that they made. A unique opportunity I had a few years ago was to make a tribute skateboard to my mom. The sponsor I was riding for at the time, the board sponsor, said, we want to make a new pro model. You have any ideas? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And I ended up making the board called the Medallion. And it's a lot like the old Pal Peralta skateboards, Tony Hawk, that company that he rode for, and the whole bit there. It was reminiscent of those graphics. And this medallion, which I still have, I'm looking at it as we speak. My mother wore this frequently in her life. After she had passed away, my dad took me in their room and said, do you want any items of hers that you can keep? And I just thought, I looked around, I'm like, I don't know, what am I going to do with this or that? But in her jewelry box, I searched through that and ruffled through things, and there was this medallion. It's about a couple inches tall, and I'd saved that, and I have it to this day. And so to put that on a skateboard, this company was willing to make it, and they're distributing it nationally. I worked with an artist out of Texas, and this whole thing, and the board came to fruition. So to me, it's huge. Now, my mom got that medallion as a gift from my father. They went to a King Tut exhibit, and he had bestowed that to her. So she had it all these years, and she wore it. And so the fact that it's on a skateboard, and it's an actual photo of the medallion. So when you see it, it's the real medallion. It just kind of cartoonish, but how cool. So when I see a kid riding that, and I just think that little wink to my mom. And people always ask, of all the pro models out that I've had with companies, what's your favorite? And this one has to be number one, the medallion, because it's a tribute to her. And of course, in my books, I always talk about her a great deal. And one of my most recent books, which is Speedy Entry, Advice for the Rebel with a Cause Teenager, which is one of my favorite books because I really dive deep into my teen years, and I talk a great deal about life and all the struggles that teenagers have. And I talk a lot about my mom in that time period when she was ill and how I was acting and reacting. It takes me to a quick story. Just a few years ago, I was at a skate park and I heard this eruption. This teenage girl was fighting with her dad, and he was standing there, and she was being belligerent and just yelling and screaming in his face, cussing and saying all this stuff. Me being proactive, I had to go over there in the middle of this transaction and just say, hey folks, whoa, I don't know what you're dealing with. Maybe this is wrong for me to jump in here, but look, I was talking to the teenage girl. I said, this is your father. I said, I was you at one time. I would do anything to go in a time machine and speak to my mom differently than I did back then. And this is what I told her. I said, stop. I said, where'd you get your shoes? You know, he paid for those. The breakfast you ate, the water from the shower you took this morning. These teenagers, I mean, you gotta be appreciative of your parents and what they've done for you. And after that transaction, they did. They calmed down, they fizzled. I walked away, but hopefully I planted a seed in her brain of, look, you can't do that to your parents. You never know what tomorrow may bring. It's unfortunate that the brain and the heart aren't as well connected when you're a teenager as they are as an adult. Wisdom happens. Experiences happen. You learn from your speed bumps. And change is a part of life. It's inevitable. It's always in the forecast. It's coming. And my life had changed a lot after my mom died. I was very independent. I was fortunate. I did have that skate shop when I was in high school. I saved every dime, and I graduated high school in 1992. I was 18 years old, and I was armed with some skills. I ended up teaching guitar full-time for 10 years, bought a small home. My ducks were in a row, and I was very lucky. I stayed drug and alcohol free. I made good choices, and let me tell you, life is about choices. Everything. You're always going to be at a fork in the road, and you got to make a choice. Hopefully you make a positive choice. And one of the big changes, of course, was that my brother, he went off to college and he got married and moved on. And my dad, he kept working a lot. But he waited 10 years to get involved with anybody else. And he remarried. So I have a stepmom, stepbrother, stepsister. My family unit changed. And all we ever wanted from my dad, my brother and I and family, was for him to be happy. And the fact that he's happy, I know my mom would be happy because he's happy. But he did wait 10 years. And if that isn't a testament to that love story of my mother and father, I mean, that's heavy when I think about them and their life and everything they went through. I have to hand it to them. I do think about my mother every single day. There's not been a day that has gone by where she hasn't been a part of me. And when I travel, I'm out and about, I do visit her grave. She's buried in Mount Gilead, where she was from. And when I'm there, it's always a heavy moment. I mean, if you don't cry, you're crying inside. You kneel down and you have that moment of silence, and it does happen. But every time I'm there, I always also think, you know what? This is special. I'm here. I'm paying tribute, but this is just a rock and this is just a place. She is with me everywhere I go. She is in me. She's part of my soul. So just being there in that moment is important, but you can't forget the times when you're struggling or you're having highs, real lows, whatever it is in your life, that those people that aren't with you anymore, they are with you. They are inside of you. She had taught me so much without me even really realizing it until I was much older. So she is with me. She does live on through me. Her spirit, even doing this podcast and talking about her, and hopefully reaching other people, touching your life, because I know you have people in your life that are special, that aren't here anymore, and you want them back. And there's ways to get them back. How do you get them back? By doing things in their honor, by respecting their time, by not letting their memory pass away. People can live on through friends, definitely family, through their children. So much to think about, and thank you today for listening and going through this journey with me. It was very sentimental for me, somewhat therapeutic, but I do appreciate it, and I hope that you can relate some of this to your own life. And some of the books that I had talked about today that I've written are available at www.dougbrown.org. It has my other podcasts and my comings and goings. Now, just recently, as in a couple hours ago, I found a poem that I wrote in high school. I believe it was my senior year. And it's really simple. I'll read it for you. It's called A True Mother. Remember not the death, forget all the illness. Let go of the low times. Hold on the memory. Remember now a life lived, which brought you forth, a life lived to raise a possession. Just remember the thought and efforts of love that were brought onto you. Remember caring and loving actions brought in. It's true, things will never be the same, for death is a chapter in life that must be taken. A mother that lives within the living is always alive. This is a true mother. And that's a little poem I wrote. And in closing, Method Airwaves today, something that my mom always told me and showed me. She was a big advocate of letting sunshine into a room. So if you had curtains or blinds, she would always open them. And to this day, I do that. I find myself in the morning, the first routine I'll do is make sure the sun's coming in. It's just kind of primal and natural, but she taught me that. And as I'm speaking and recording this, it's been raining outside. It's a rainy, dark day, but I'm letting the sunshine in, figuratively, without a doubt. There's some sunshine in here, and life is good. Life is now. Life is present. Stay positive. Think about good things in your life. Be productive. Let the sunshine in. That's what I'm doing. Now, the music that you're hearing on my exit here is my mom playing piano. I believe it was probably 1988 or so. So I was a freshman in high school, and this was taken from a home movie, but it caught her playing piano with my aunt. So you'll hear my mom playing the piano. Until next time, everybody, thanks again for listening. This is Doug Brown signing off for Method Airwaves. Stay positive.